Networks Southeast have done it again. In June, steam returned to Hastings after an absence of over 25 years. 75069 climbed through Orr en route to Ashford. This is Steam Railway video number 3. In this issue, the NYMR Silver Jubilee. Compare and contrast scenes of today's established railway with archive footage and the icing on the cake. A return to Corfe. The repatriated M7 on its first trip to Corfe Castle. Network Steam. A southern region extravaganza, 4 engines, 3 new mainline routes, and the shattering of the third rail steam band. Gallery, featuring the N2 on the Great Central Railway. City of Truro goes west, the NRM 440 on tour in the West Country. Finally, news, including Green Arrow. In June, the North Yorkshire Moors Railway celebrated 25 years of preservation. In these opening scenes at Gromont, Salmon and 257 Squadron, the 2 visiting engines at the gala, are being prepared for action. The Battle of Britain is based at Bury and is enjoying its second loan period on the Moors. The Bullid proceeds to the water column. The North Yorkshire Moors Railway was once part of a through route between Malton and Whitby. BR closed the line in March 1965. In 1967, the preservationists moved in, operating members' specials on the BR-owned line. The first ex-BR locomotives arrived 3 years later. The railway did not officially reopen until 1973. 27 years after closure, Dame Vera Lynn passes Gromont Shed. This locomotive was repatriated from the Hellenic State Railways in Greece in 1984. The pioneers of the line's revival were special guests of the railway. The original secretary of the Preservation Society, Tom Salmon, was invited to cut the cake.
I think I'll just about manage that.
The celebrations were centered on Gromont. Salmon, the engine, was one of a number of locomotives used on a series of demonstration freights through the station. Salmon is now based at the Rutland Railway Museum in Cottesmore. This engine was one of the first steam locomotives to be used by the preservationists. These scenes were filmed in the late 1960s. Approximately 4 miles of the line was in use at this stage. The Andrew Barclay-built saddle tank propels a train to the summit, the temporary terminus for the line. Watering was primitive in the early days. It's all hands on deck as Salmon and Wall's End Slipway No. 3 are caught short. A Titfield Thunderbolt scene prevails. The 1898-built Burroughs Well tank was an oil-burning locomotive. It now resides at the Tanfield Railway. No. 3 has not steamed for years. Mervale departs Goathland. This Hudswell-Clark engine was in action on the line by February 1969. The first passenger train was in April. The route had only lost its BR service 4 years earlier. The double track remained in position only temporarily. Open weekends such as this were run. The public were invited to become members for a day. This practice would never be tolerated in the 1990s. At Gromont Station, volunteers work on the permanent way. Mervale shunts a works train into the platform. This engine is now based on the Middleton Railway in Leeds. It returned to the moors during the 1990 gala. The success of this locomotive's return encouraged the railway to invite Salmon for the 1992 Silver Jubilee Gala. In 1992, the visiting Bullied Pacific powers the demonstration freight through the same station. The use of an express passenger engine on this duty is perhaps inappropriate. Considerably more appropriate was the use of the Q7. 901 ascends the bank towards Goathland. The Silver Jubilee is just the beginning. The railway is regarded as one of the major tourist attractions in the area and will no doubt celebrate many more anniversaries. .30053 is back. The repatriated M7 has returned to service on the Swanage Railway after an extensive one-year rebuilding program. The Drummond tank climbs to Harmon's Cross during running-in trials, only 4 days after the restored engine returned to Dorset. The Swanage branch was reborn in 1975. The aim of the preservationists was to return to Corfe Castle and eventually Wareham. At Corfe Castle Station, volunteers proceed to clear the undergrowth in preparation for track relaying to continue. The scenes are from 1991 and are now archived. 26 years earlier, passengers wait for a train to Swanage. The standard class 4MT arrives from Wareham. Another train is waiting in the station. Steam bowed out on this line in June 1967. Diesel-electric multiple units took over the service until 1972, when BR closed the line. Corfe Castle has not had a railway service for 20 years. Hopefully, in 1993, a passenger service will be resumed. The M7 approaches the station on a works train. This was the very first visit of this engine to Corfe since its restoration at the East Anglian Railway Museum at Chapel. The engine is owned by the Drummond Locomotive Society. The station remains virtually intact and is available for use by the railway. The medieval ruins of Corfe Castle overlook the station. The view from the castle is a classic. A train heads for Wareham in 1966. The branch was a victim of rationalisation. The busy summer period could not offset the poor receipts from the winter months. In reality, more tickets were bought elsewhere to Swanage than were bought at Swanage Station. We close this section with another view from the castle grounds. The M7 continues over Studland Road Viaduct towards Norden. The Purbeck line was, in fact, a regular haunt for this engine. It was allocated to Bournemouth Depot and last worked the branch in 1964. Hopefully, next year, this engine will again work passenger trains beyond Harman's Cross. The Swanage Railway will become a 13-mile round trip. Holidaymakers will at last be able to avoid the congested roads through the Isle of Purbeck to Swanage. Corfe Castle will have a new bypass, an iron road. In June 1986, Network South East was launched to revitalise the commuter railways of London and its surrounding area. 6 years later, the British Rail's subsector is actively promoting both modernisation and railway heritage. This is 75069 on an NSE special heading for Ashford. Network South East operates over 2,000 route miles. 75% of this is electrified and banned to steam. However, NSE have realised that steam locomotives can attract thousands. A surprising proportion of the network has already returned to steam. The story began on the Luggage Hall branch 3 months before the network was launched. Hagley Hall featured on open day specials up the branch. An unadvertised trip to Salisbury was a bonus. In October 1986, Gerald Daniels and the Salisbury area team built on this success. The Blackmore Vale Express ran west of Salisbury to Yeovil. The engines featured were Clanline, Sir Nigel Gresley and Burton Agnes Hall. The following year, the Hall returned to officially inaugurate Andover to Salisbury steam. Romsey became a new destination in 1988. The autumn runs were expected to be the last southern steam. Two years later, the skeptics were proved wrong. In September 1991, another Bullet Pacific, Tor Valley, returned to the Southern on the threatened Folkestone Harbour branch. The third rail was switched off during this event. In October, the Fen Line Gala featured steam from Cambridge. King's Lynn was the destination for 3 Pacifics. December saw Christmas specials on the Sudbury branch, utilising the Chapel-based N7. These successful trains were repeated at Easter. NSE operated Didcot to Oxford shuttles in February 1992. These were run in conjunction with Cholsey and Molesford centenary celebrations. In May, the Aylesbury to Princes Risborough route joined the steam network. 44932 was used on another shuttle service. History was made during June. NSE broke the third rail ban for steam excursions. Ashford and Hastings are both live locations. Preserved steam was banned from electrified lines because of the danger of trespass. This photographer in the 1960s pauses as he considers the prospect of a lively introduction to 750 volts DC. Ashford 150 celebrated the town's long association with railways. Sir Lemuel was just one of the exhibits at the BR Chartleton Depot open weekend. The Arthur was in light steam. The National Railway Museum engine was on standby as 2 other mainline steam locomotives worked a shuttle service from Ashford to Hastings. The Romney Hythe and Dymchurch Railway was also represented. On the Sunday, Tor Valley was present, and so was another rebuilt bullet, Eddystone. In fact, this is the same engine. Tor Valley was sporting nameplates from sister engine 34028. Eddystone is still being restored by the SR Pacific Group. Highlight of Ashford 150 was the use of Tor Valley and 75069 on the Marsh-Link route. The Standard departs for Hastings with the first train on the Sunday. Probably the best known photographic location on the line is at Rye. Worried photographers watch as Mallard threatened to ruin a classic reflection of the windmill. On the Saturday, Tor Valley worked all trains, whereas the Standard operated the shuttles on the Sunday. The rebuilt Bullet passes en route to Hastings. No turning facilities are available at either Ashford or Hastings. Both engines faced Ashford to aid the ascent of the 1 in 60 climb out of Hastings. At Hastings, the signalman pulls off the wrong peg. Tor Valley awaits the other signal before departing with the first steam-haul passenger train from the town since the 1960s. Probably the most interesting workings were the evening runs. On the Saturday, a dining train was hauled by Tor Valley from Hastings to Ashford. The Bullet works light to Hastings. This is the return working. The following evening, Tor Valley worked the 9:30 p.m. departure from Ashford to London Bridge. At Headcorn, the appearance of steam on the electrified Kent main line was quite an occasion. This station is rarely this active at 10 o'clock on a Sunday evening. Tor Valley passes on an historic train. The man of Kent stands at the buffer stops at London Bridge Station. Whoever would have believed that this busy London terminus would ever see a steam locomotive again? Tor Valley had shattered the third rail ban for steam excursions. "75069 arrived on another train from Ashford. The appearance of these two locomotives at the station ended a spell of 28 years without steam. In 1964, the steam locomotive was eliminated on the Southern Region's Central Division. buffer stops, the incredible scenes continued. Tor Valley was shunt released by a diesel before hauling out the stock brought in by the Standard. 75069 was watered before departure, light engine, to Hither Green after 1 a.m. on Monday morning. On platform 8, Tor Valley awaits departure for Hither Green. By this stage, the station was virtually deserted, as even the hardiest enthusiasts returned to their beds. This is the first steam-hauled passenger departure since the end of regular BR steam. The train here was not advertised. Even the trips up the main line were only booked for unusual motive power. This service was bound for Eastleigh via Hither Green. At the South London depot, the Bullied Pacific would join 777 and 75069 to form a unique triple header. The route was via Clapham Junction and down the southwestern main line. At Eastleigh, the train arrives at 7:10 on the Monday morning. Most of its passengers would have been in transit since 9:30 the previous evening. The fortunate few passengers on this train have not only experienced superpower, but have just broken the steam ban on the southwestern main line. This was actually a positioning run. The 3 engines were all booked to visit Exeter. The 1992 steam route from Eastleigh included the freight-only line to Romsey. However, the main attraction was the first steam in 25 years on the line from Yeovil to Exeter. At Romsey, the test train, powered by the Standard and Tor Valley, slows through the platforms en route to Exeter Central. The train continued to Yeovil. There, 75069 was turned. The engines were recoupled tender to tender. The pair depart Exeter. Surprisingly, the train is actually departing the yard and not the station. Steam officially returned to the route 11 days later. At Mottisfont, or is it Dunbridge, another locomotive joined the celebrations. The M7 from Swanage passed its BR test a few days earlier. The locomotive was heading for Salisbury, where it was booked for shunting demonstrations. At Salisbury, the shunting demonstration on the first weekend became a passenger service round the triangle. The second weekend, a coach was added to the 2 brake vans to provide extra accommodation. The engine was also renumbered. .30673 was once a Salisbury station pilot. The station was the central point of the steam activities. Twice each day, 3 engines were in steam together on different trains. This is Tor Valley on the Salisbury to Eastleigh shuttle. The NSE liveried stock was used exclusively on the shuttle trains. The Standard worked these on the first weekend and the Bullet on the second Sunday. The other engine, Sir Lamiel, worked to Exeter on both weekends. The King Arthur passes Dinton. Appearances can be deceptive. This section of line is actually single track. The former up line is retained by the Ministry of Defence. The previous weekend, 777 was booked to work the return train from Exeter. This is the positioning run ascending Honiton Bank. The King Arthur was followed by the inaugural passenger train. Again, the honour was handed to Tor Valley. Steam officially ended here in 1964, although some steam continued until 1967. These tours were run to commemorate 25 years since the end of steam on the Southern. The 1 in 80 Honiton Bank proved to be no problem for the Bullet. However, the Standard Class 4 was expected to struggle on the steeply graded route. 75069 climbs out of Exeter on the 1 in 100. The standard would be relieved at Salisbury by Tor Valley. 34027 had been operating the shuttle service throughout the day and would work this train between Salisbury and Eastleigh. The Bullid passes Mottisfont. The stock which had been used on the shuttle was booked to return to Clapham Junction with unusual motive power. A double-headed steam run was anticipated. However, Network South East bottled out, and the two remaining Class 50s piloted the Standard and Bullid up the main line. Since this view was taken, NSE have confirmed that steam may run after dark on third rail metals. In September, Tor Valley is expected to depart Waterloo with an evening positioning run to Bournemouth. Another historic train. Our gallery section in this edition features archive footage of the N2 on the Great Central Railway. The engine is presently out of action, pending major overhaul. 69523 is the only remaining member of the class. The N2 approaches Quorn with an evening train from Rothley. City of Truro returned to Cornwall in May for the first time since 1961. Here, the National Collection 440 is being prepared for the day's service on the Bodmin and Wentford Railway. 3440 had previously been on display in the City of Truro. The attraction of the first 100 miles per hour claimant for an 11-day period proved to be a great success for the railway, which opened its doors to 10,000 visitors. The 3.5-mile line is steeply graded. Truro climbs from Bodmin Parkway. Bodmin General, the 440 arrives on another service from Bodmin Parkway. The veteran engine worked approximately 50 journeys on the branch. The locomotives tour did not stop here. On June the 7th, the 1903 built engine was moved by road to the South Devon Railway. At Buckfastleigh, City of Truro awaits the departure time for the first train of the day to Totnes Riverside. In the cab, fireman Jack Trott adds more coal to the fire. With the temperature in the mid-70s, the open cab was regarded by the crew to be a blessing. The right of way is given. During the locomotive's tour of the West Country, an NRM representative was on hand. Ray Towell, the National Railway Museum Curator of Operations, is seated on the tender. The driver is Dave Knowling. There are 3 stations on the route, only 2 having public access. This is the intermediate one, the award-winning Staverton station. Our last view of the city on a service train is departing Staverton for Totnes. The South Devon Railway operated this engine for 3 weekends in June. Its next destination was the West Somerset Railway. Our final view is of the veteran engine on the vintage train. Since this view was taken, the vintage train has new owners. City of Truro was restored to mainline action for the Great Western 150 celebrations. Unfortunately, the locomotive missed out on a visit to Cornwall in 1985. It ended its recent mainline career with poor loadings. However, this recent West Country visit proves that Truro is still a star attraction. The Torbay and Dartmouth Railway has a new engine. Dumbleton Hall has returned to traffic 16 years after the locomotive was rescued from Barry Scrapyard. 4920 departs Kingswear during the railway's gala. Another Great Western locomotive in the news is 2857, on loan to the Gloucestershire and Warwickshire Railway. The Severn Valley-based engine is on loan for the summer season. Another locomotive on loan is the Nelpeg P3. The Northeastern 060 departs Llangollen, piloted by the Ginty. The double-header was just one of the attractions at the Llangollen Railway Gala. The P3 was also used on a 21-wagon freight. 2392 approaches the new terminus of the line at Glyndwrdwy. The gala was by far the most ambitious run by the Llangollen to date. On the East Lancashire Railway, another lone engine, the Cheddleton 4F, heads north to Rawtenstall. This locomotive is expected to remain at the railway until January. Across the Pennines, the Keighley and Worth Valley Railway, now a stopover for locomotives between Settle and Carlisle duties, has been playing host to Blue Peter. The A2 is too heavy to operate regularly on the line. However, special dispensation was given for this train, a special Oxenhope to Ingro service. Blue Peter would soon return to the Settle and Carlisle. In the next 2 months, the S&C will feature the A2, A3, Flying Scotsman, and the return of A4, Sir Nigel Gresley. On the northbound Cumbrian Mountain Express of June the 13th, Blue Peter was escorted by a helicopter. It was hired by the BBC to film the engine for the children's programme of the same name. This included the now traditional low flying alongside the engine as it crossed Ribblehead Viaduct. Blue Peter's mainline career is just beginning. Green Arrow's career is coming to an end. Here, the V2 heads south on the S&C. The locomotive is due to retire from the main line in August. This is the same tour south of Appleby. One of the most interesting rail tours on the route was the Worth Valley 125 Express. This tour, seen approaching Skipton, featured steam from Oxenhope to Carlisle and return. The Express was the first steam-hauled public through train from an independent line to BR Metals and back. The engine is Bahamas. The S&C weather goes from bad to worse. 6201 Princess Elizabeth powers up the long drag in disgusting weather. From a 6P to an 8F. 48151, the Carnforth-based 8F, has again been operating Furness Flyer shuttle services to Barrow. Interestingly, Sir Nigel Gresley, at present undergoing an extended overhaul at Carnforth, is expected to work the Furness Flyer on the 30th of August. Another Carnforth-based engine, 5407, has been operating on the West Highland extension. The Black 5 returns to Fort William from Mallaig. Unfortunately, this engine has been declared a failure. The K1 is expected to operate all West Highland steam duties until the end of the season. Scottish steam during August and September includes the West Highland and Aberdeen to Elgin and Inverness steam. In the south, Waterloo to Bournemouth will become a new steam route, and the proposed North Wales Coast programme includes steam to Llandudno with the standard tank. However, all has not been well on this route. 71,000 Duke of Gloucester works the first North Wales Coast Express of the season. Cancellations and piloting with diesel motive power have troubled this route in the last 2 months. A steam ban was implemented on July the 20th. Until further notice, no steam will operate on this line. BR are proposing to use alternative routes, including the S&C, until the risk of line-side fires is reduced. 3 days earlier, Britannia works the Innis-Mond Express. Note the white cab roof, a feature of the Stratford-based engines. We close our programme with a view of King Edward I departing Stratford-upon-Avon on a William Shakespeare Express. Every month, Steam Railway brings you the very best news, features and photography from the world of steam preservation. Steam Railway from your newsagent every month. We hope you enjoyed this issue of Steam Railway Video. Transport Video Publishing produce a wide range of archive railway programs, including By Southern to the West. For further details, send a stamped addressed envelope to P.O. Box 229, Wheat Hampstead, Hertfordshire, AL4 8SD.